I'm new to glass and seeing Joe's work has really impressed me. Jo has this really great way of creating repeat patterns of glass. In her last project she took inspiration from recycled wallpaper structures by Kirsten Hassenfeld and started to transform her work from 2D into 3D forms. For her final piece in second year she created these beautiful 3 stacking bowls which perfectly reflect the light onto each other.
Danny's work has really changed within the last year. Her previous work consisted of silver rings and stone setting, but wanting to become a more sustainable jeweller, she became focused on using recycled materials and eliminating semi-precious gemstones. The inspiration for her latest collection of rings came about because of her plans to travel to the Amazon rainforest. Sustainability is an important part of her process. When making these rings, she used solely recycled plastics and metals.
For Dialogue Part 1, we decided to create a tagline from which our work could expand. Taking inspiration from Jo's glasswork and the way light is an important aspect of glass, combined with my focus on sustainability, we decided on shadow and light, creating something from nothing.
Our mission statement for this tagline is quite open-ended, which we thought was the best way to go considering we aren't as yet thinking about a final outcome. We didn't want to tie ourselves into anything too soon. We want our experiments to lead our creative process, problem solving as we go, and really getting out of our comfort zones.
Creating something from nothing, is it conceptual? Is it anything? What does it mean to be something or nothing? One mind might just see a shadow, another might see something really beautiful hidden in the darkness. Equally, they might see something beautiful in the light given the chance, changing perceptions of what is real and what is not. We began our project by looking at artists who use light and shadow in their work to create a dialogue between the maker and material and the viewer and the object.
The first person we came across is Mako Tequila. We really liked how when you first look at her work, you don't instantly see what the piece is about. First you see the metal worn on the body, and it looks very contemporary. But then when you continue to look at the piece, you see the shadow cast by the metal onto the body, and it's something completely unexpected. We also found it interesting because Danny saw the shadows first, and not the metal. This shows how contrasting minds perceive things differently, depending on who you are. Maybe it's because mine and Danny's artistic backgrounds are different, or maybe it's just because we are different people.
Next, we saw inspiration from the lighting company Nervous System, in particular their Hi-Fi series. Their use of negative and positive space within this series creates curiously natural-looking shadows, as though cast by sunlight through the trees. It continues to fascinate us how through the addition of light, these small objects have the potential to fill an entire room. We really like the fact that some people might see the made object before they notice the shadows, but others might completely overlook the made object and just see the shadows.
This artist Sol Sinsbo creates temporary patterns for the wearer by casting shadows across the body. There is no clue as to what has created the shadow, and to be honest, that's the last thing that enters your mind. These photographs are mesmerising to look at, and if you look long enough, you begin to forget that it's shadows on the body, and start to think that they're actually there, almost like black lines or dots have been painted on the wearer. This pushes the boundaries of what is real and what is not.
Having considered how some artists distort imagery by projecting it onto 3-dimensional forms, be that a body or otherwise, it was time to look at an artist whose beginning and end of the creative process was completely distorted. Bridget Riley's work is a series of optical illusions. At first, her work can look like a simple set of lines or dots on paper, but it soon appears to walk before your eyes. She has achieved the result of a shadow projected onto something 3-dimensional, but in fact, there is no shadow projection and no object. We really like how this makes you think, and again, it creates a great dialogue between the maker and material, because there isn't really anything there, but at the same time there is.
First set of experiments, we wanted to see how well patterns on the screen printed glass would cast shadows over the body. Luckily the sun was out that day, so we got some really crisp shadows. We really love how the shadows cast distort depending on the curves of the face, much like Sol Sinsbo's work. Taking inspiration from Sol Sinsbo, we used household objects to create shadows across the body. We really wanted to get the point across that the actual object that is casting the shadow doesn't have to be pretty. It only matters what the shadow looks like.
Next, we decided to go more in depth into how the object casting the shadow doesn't have to look pleasant. We used recycled objects and stuck them together with masking tape, elastic bands and Velcro to create pieces that looked awful. We then suspended them from a clothing rail and cast the shadows onto the body to make shadow jewellery. Some of the pieces of shadow jewellery we created actually look like they are there, like you can reach out and touch them. Perfect for our creating something from nothing concept.
Next, we thought we'd try sandblasting onto glass through lace. We chose to use lace, not only because it's a material that is intricate, and so we'd get really detailed shadows, but also because it's something that is typically worn on the body. Changing the pressure on the sandblaster determined how defined the image was. Using spray mount to hold the lace in place also allowed us to get a more intricate result.
Sandblasting created a very defined projection, but the image was also very obvious on the glass. Taking inspiration from Mako Tequila, we wanted the shadow to be more visible to the viewer than the design on the glass, an illusion. We thought acid etching could be a way of diluting the image on the glass while still creating a strong and crisp shadow. This thinking led to coating pieces of lace in acid etch liquid and pressing them onto the glass. The acid etched lace pattern is much less visible on the glass than the sandblasted pattern, but the shadow it casts is just as clear.
Next, we decided to experiment with casting shadows through 3D pieces of sandblasted glass. We chose three-dimensional forms because of the possibility to distort the shadows and refract the light, potentially creating overlaps within the shadows. The range of angles would allow the shadow to fill or to not fill a space, depending on how you angled the glass structure. Here though, the made object is too unspoiled and we think it distracts from the shadow cast. Here the dialogue is not as strong because you can clearly see the object casting the shadow, and it doesn't make you think about whether it's something or nothing. It is quite clearly something, and that's not what we want.
In our most recent experiment, we cast shadows onto a white vase. To do this, we shone light through pieces of glass which had been acid etched or sandblasted, and also through acetate onto which Joe had hand-drawn intricate lace patterns. This added a new layer to something that was otherwise plain and everyday, creating something out of nothing. Since experimenting with the vase shadows, we've started thinking about how we could cut the object out altogether. What if the vase was simply a projection too, a trick of the light or a beautiful vessel? We also really like the idea of creating something from nothing by suspending pieces of glass, metal and jesmonite. The suspended pieces would initially look like nothing, maybe they would even look horrible, but when the light shone onto them the shadow would form something stunning and surprising. It could be patterns on a wall, a design, or even shadow jewellery across a person. We thought about how the suspended pieces could turn on their wires, meaning that the end shadow result wouldn't always be correct. You'd have to keep watching the shadow to wait for all the pieces to turn into the correct alignment for the shadow to form something.
Another concept we thought about was the potential to use shadows and light to extend a piece of jewellery. The jewellery would consist of a metal cage that would rest on the body, for example the shoulders, with sections of glass and possibly jesmonite in it. The initial piece of jewellery would be very contemporary and potentially ugly, but when the light shone onto the piece, the shadows created across the body would be really nice. The wearer would have an extended piece of shadow jewellery, but only for a brief moment. We've decided that we need to think less about constructing a piece, which is hard because as makers that's what we do, and think more about clever and unexpected ways to use shadows and light to our advantage. We really like the fact that using shadows and light only allows the wearer or user to have the piece for a brief moment. This would make our work very conceptual, something to get people thinking about what is real, what is an object. Does the fact that it's captured in a photo make it real? Or do we actually have to be able to hold an object and carry it around with us for it to be an object? It is also a great dialogue to have between the maker and the material, because the maker is always going to be questioning the work and trying to push it further. And the maker is also always going to be considering whether the material is actually something or nothing.
We've decided to continue working together for the remainder of this project. We feel that we've only just touched the surface of our concept and have really enjoyed bouncing ideas off each other and experimenting in each other's practices. At the start of this project, when we were informed we'd be put in partners with someone from another discipline area, we were both very apprehensive. But after working together for the last 4 weeks, we actually feel we work better as a team. Coming from different artistic backgrounds, we've really helped each other to broaden our mindsets and step out of our comfort zones. We're both really excited to move forward and continue to push the boundaries of making new dialogues between the maker and the material.